disease. Now, by the show of hands in the room, it's most of you. And the reason for that is, every year in the United States, more people die of cancer and heart disease than anything else combined. So now I'm going to ask you a third question. What if today I could give you a single pill, a single medication, which could take away the risk of cancer and the risk of heart disease? So you look at me and you say, Dr. Allen, it's a scam. It's too good to be true. But for a moment, if you will, what if I was serious? What if there really was a pill that you could take this afternoon, right here in this room, in this assembly, that would stop that risk of cancer and stop the risk of heart disease? Over the next half hour, we're going to have a discussion which could change your lives forever. And yes, I'm going to show you exactly what pill we're talking about. No, as you've probably figured out, it's not some great medical breakthrough. It's not a new discovery in cancer care or in heart disease. What we're going to talk about is the importance of never, ever picking up a package of cigarettes, cigars, or tobacco. Now you'll say to yourself, well, wait a second. There are plenty of people out there that have had heart disease and that have had cancer that we know don't smoke. And we all probably know people, either in our families or in our communities, that smoke and they seem to be doing just fine. So what are you talking about? Well, let's talk, first of all, about what happens when you smoke a cigarette. So with every puff of smoke, this may come as a surprise, but over 250 chemicals are released into your lungs with every puff of smoke that Hashem never meant to be in your lungs. And in fact, what's very interesting is that even though people blow out the smoke, more of the chemicals stay in your lungs than you'd ever imagine. And that's just with one puff. The average smoker smokes about 2 packs of cigarettes per day. That's 40 cigarettes a day. That's over thousands of puffs each and every day, each puff having all of these chemicals go directly into your lungs. So what happens? I want to know, and no one can feel themselves breathing right now, and neither can I, because it's just effortless. We're sitting here listening to ourselves breathe. But what if you were out on a basketball court in the winter, and it was cold, less than 30 degrees, and you came in for playing a great game of basketball? You feel yourself breathing, and you feel the effort of breathing. But now imagine that each breath is painful, and that each breath is difficult to get the air out. And you can't walk from here to the end of the room because your lungs are clogged with all of those chemicals. That's exactly what happens when you smoke. Also, the heart. There are blood vessels that go to the heart, small blood vessels. And right now our hearts are beating and we don't feel anything differently. But if those blood vessels get clogged up with all those chemicals, suddenly the heart starts to beat a bit slower and a bit slower. And over time, those blood vessels can clog. And that's when someone has a heart attack. And it stops. So you might think, well, these things happen to older people. These things happen to our grandparents. They don't happen to high school kids. They don't happen to junior high kids. They don't happen to us. But you know what? They've done studies. And they've looked at the inside of those blood vessels of kids right in your age group. And with only 1 or 2 months of smoking, those blood vessels start to narrow. And the airways start to shorten and they start to narrow. And the breath comes much more difficult. And they can't breathe. Anyone who knows someone in high school who smokes and they've seen them play a game of basketball will know exactly what I'm talking about. You see that someone who looks healthy, who's strong, who's fit, who's the best on the court, if he smokes, after 15 minutes, he's finished, he's tired. That effect happens right away, within a few months. But there's something else that's a little bit scarier, even than what I've told you about heart and lung disease. And that something is cancer. So cancer is a term for a growth of cells in the body that grows out of control. These cells grow very quickly, and if they're in the lung, they can close off the airways, and they can cause a person to even cough up blood. Lung cancer was the most common cause of cancer death last year in the United States. Over 60% of lung cancer results directly from smoking. Let's say that again. The most common cause of cancer in the United States is lung cancer, which results directly from smoking. That means, if people would stop smoking all across the country, then the major cause of death from cancer would stop. And the thing about lung cancer is, within 9 months, most people who are diagnosed with lung cancer are dead. So I've told you a little bit about statistics. But let's talk a little bit about real stories, real people. There's a boy named Sean. Not a Jewish boy, but a nice boy. 12 years old, he lives in California. He's the star of his junior high track team. Now Sean, after school with his friends one day, starts to chew tobacco. And at first, it seems like an unusual thing to do. But his friends are doing it. It seems like an interesting thing, so he decides to do it. He starts chewing tobacco. At first, he's just doing it because his friends are doing it. But eventually, every day after school, he and his friends are chewing tobacco. At 14, his mother finds him spending all of his allowance on chewing tobacco. And she says to him, "Sean, you've got to stop doing this. This is so harmful to your health. This could cause major problems." Sean says, "Mom, you don't understand. Everyone on the track team is chewing tobacco. And besides which, you've seen all the baseball players. They chew tobacco all the whole game long. Nothing happens to them. Nothing wrong happens to them. What are you talking about?" She says, "Sean, I'm telling you, if you keep chewing tobacco, something bad is going to happen." We don't always listen to our mothers. At 18, Sean, when he was a year away from finishing high school, noticed a red lump on the side of his tongue. He brought it to the attention of his mother. It was hurting him for a few weeks. They went to the doctor. Well, the doctor looked at it and he said, "Sean, this is not good. We're going to have to take a piece of your tongue and see what the problem is." So they took out part of his tongue, and it turned out that it was cancer. And when they did some more tests, it had actually spread to his jaw. At 18 years old, Sean had to have surgery to remove part of his jaw and most of his tongue. He went for 7 weeks of radiation treatments, where he couldn't eat and he had to be fed through a feeding tube. But he said to himself, "It's okay, because at least I'm alive. At least I'll get over this." 2 weeks after his radiation treatments were finished, he had a pain in the back of his neck. He went to the doctors, and the doctors did some tests, and they said, "Sean, the cancer has spread to the bones." At age 19, Sean was dead. All that's potential ruined by chewing tobacco. I'll tell you another story. It's a story of a boy named Brian. Brian was 13 years old. He was a straight A student. And one day after school, his friends were getting together and they decided they wanted to smoke some cigarettes. One of the people in the group had already started smoking, but Brian was a smart kid. He was a good student. He said to them, I'm really not interested in smoking. I'm really not interested in smoking. It's not for me." His parents had always told him, "Don't pick up cigarettes." He said, "Fine, I'm not going to pick up cigarettes." A few weeks later, again, they're outside after school, and they just finished a big test, and Brian got 100%. He was feeling great. Finally, he had gotten that math grade that he always wanted to get. He was so excited, he's going to tell his parents. And his friend said, "Brian, let's just have a cigarette to celebrate. You know, I know you don't smoke, and I know you're a good guy, but this is just one day. Just one day." So Brian didn't really want to, but he did want to celebrate, and all of his friends, and he decided one cigarette, no big deal. So he smoked one cigarette. Any of you who have seen someone smoke their first cigarette, he was puffing and wheezing and turning green and coughing and choking. He didn't even make it through part of the cigarette. He threw it away. But the next time he got 100 on his test, he decided, you know what, I'm not a wimp. I'm going to make it through that cigarette. I'm not going to cough and choke and turn green. I'm going to make it through. So he started to smoke the cigarette, and he got the hang of it. He was a smart guy. He figured out how to smoke it. He blew it out. He looked cool. A few weeks later, Brian smoked another cigarette. By the age of 15, he was smoking 2 packs a day. Now, all along, he said to himself, "I'm going to quit smoking. As soon as I'm 18, I'm going to quit smoking. It's just for a few years so I can get through some tests in high school. I want to get into college. I want to do some other things in my life. I'm just going to get through a few years, and then I'll quit smoking." But it didn't happen. and he got a job, and he finished college, and he got married, and he had a child. At age 33, he was still smoking 2 packs a day. Well, Brian was a smart guy. He got a good job in engineering. And one day he came home. He wasn't feeling so well, and he said to his wife, "I'm going to lay down for a little bit. My stomach hurts." He didn't get up till the next morning. He told his wife, "I'm really not feeling well. I need to go to the doctor." Long story short, they did some tests. Brian had lung cancer spread to his stomach. 9 weeks after he was diagnosed, he passed away. But that's not the sad part of the story. That's not the terrible part of the story, and I'm going to tell it to you right now. At his funeral, his family, his mother, his sisters, his friends, everyone was crying at his funeral. But the sad part is this. On the way back from the car, from burying Brian, his friends and his family started to light up cigarettes. So you'd say to yourself, you think to yourself,